For over 3 decades, a quiet village nestled in the heart of Slovakia held a profound secret. Whispers of something truly divine. Stories passed quietly from parent to child, of young children who claimed they saw a beautiful lady on a remote mountain. Messages, gentle yet profound, that called for simplicity, for genuine freedom, and for a deeper, more intimate love for Christ. For years, many believed with unwavering conviction, while others, equally devout, harbored doubts, wrestling with the mystery. But now, after decades of patient observation and careful discernment, the Vatican, the very heart of the Catholic Church, has made it official. On July 9, 2025, a date that will echo through the annals of Marian devotion, the Catholic Church officially approved public devotion to what may well be one of the most significant Marian apparitions of our time. This, then, is the extraordinary story of Our Lady of Litmanová. What truly happened on that secluded mountain? What were the messages Mary imparted, and why, after so long, is the Church making this monumental announcement now? Tucked away amidst the undulating peaks of the Carpathian Mountains in eastern Slovakia lies a small, seemingly unremarkable village known as Litmanová. Surrounded by ancient, whispering forests and rolling, verdant hills, it looks like the quintessential European hamlet, a place where time itself seems to move at a more deliberate, unhurried pace. Just outside the village, rising gently from the landscape, stands Mount Zvir, a densely wooded hill crowned by a simple, unassuming wooden cabin near its summit. For generations, it was a quiet, almost forgotten place, known only to local shepherds and occasional hikers. But in 1990, an ordinary summer day irrevocably changed the fabric of this tranquil existence. It was August 5, 1990. 2 young girls, Ivka Korchakova and Katka Cheshalkova, were inside the humble cabin, seeking refuge from a sudden summer storm, their heads bowed in prayer. What transpired next was nothing short of extraordinary. They described a beautiful woman, luminous and ethereal, appearing to them bathed in an otherworldly light. She wore a long, flowing veil, her presence radiating an indescribable peace that instantly calmed their youthful fears. She introduced herself with a profound simplicity, using a title that resonated with deep theological significance: the Immaculate Purity. At that tender age, Ivka and Katka, just 11 and 12 years old respectively, had no idea that this single, miraculous moment would not only change their lives forever, but would also transform their quiet village into a beacon of faith for thousands. Ivka and Katka were, by all accounts, perfectly ordinary schoolgirls from a quiet town. They weren't known for visions, for any particular piety beyond their age, or for anything that might set them apart. Yet, after that initial bewildering encounter, the luminous woman kept returning. The girls, drawn by an irresistible spiritual magnet, would climb the hill every Sunday, especially during prayer times, a pilgrimage that quickly became central to their lives. And again, with a regularity that defied explanation, they reported that Mary came to them. Sometimes she spoke, her words gentle but clear. Sometimes she was silent, simply present, but always her presence filled them with an overwhelming sense of peace, a peace that lingered long after she had vanished. The villagers, initially skeptical, began to notice. Curiosity, often tinged with doubt, slowly transformed into wonder. Crowds, at first small and local, began to grow. Soon people were traveling from neighboring towns, then from more distant regions of Slovakia, and eventually pilgrims began arriving from countries like Poland and Ukraine, all drawn by the compelling accounts and a profound spiritual hunger. They came to witness what was happening on Mount Zvir, to experience the palpable sense of the divine that permeated the sacred space. Crucially, the girls never sought personal gain. They never asked for money. They did not become celebrities, nor did their lives become grand. Instead, they remained remarkably simple, grounded in their faith and their community. And even after the apparitions reportedly ceased in 1995, the powerful memory of what had transpired on that quiet mountain never faded. If anything, it deepened. So, what exactly did the Virgin Mary say during these encounters? Her words, as recounted by Ivka and Katka, were gentle, yet undeniably powerful. Unlike some other well-known apparitions that focused on dire warnings of war or impending suffering, the messages of Litmanová predominantly focused on the human heart, on personal conversion, and on a return to fundamental Christian virtues. One of her most repeated and poignant messages resonated with universal appeal. Let Jesus set you free, and do not allow your enemy to limit your freedom for which Jesus shed so much blood. A soul that is free is the soul of a child. She consistently called the faithful to return to silence, to embrace simplicity, and to cultivate a childlike trust in God, reminding them that true joy lies not in worldly pursuits, but in spiritual liberation. On August 7, 1994, a message was given that deeply touched the hearts of many. I love you just as you are. I love you, I want you to be happy, but this world will never make you happy. And perhaps the most striking, profoundly simple, and transformative message was this: begin to live simply, to think simply, and to act simply. Seek out silence so that the Spirit of Christ may be born anew within you. These were not grand prophecies of global events. They were not complex theological treatises. Instead, they were heartfelt, direct calls to profound personal change, calls to transform how we live our daily lives and how we love our Creator and one another. As word of the apparitions and the compelling nature of the messages spread, curiosity naturally turned into widespread pilgrimage. People came from humble villages, bustling cities, and eventually from other countries, all drawn by a shared longing. They climbed Mount Zvir, often with heavy hearts laden with burdens, but always with hopes of finding peace, experiencing healing, and making a deeper connection with the divine. Some brought their worn rosaries, their fingers tracing each bead in fervent prayer. Others simply carried the weight of their sorrows. Many left transformed, experiencing profound inner peace, spiritual renewal, and often inexplicable physical or emotional healings. The Church, as is its long-standing tradition in such matters, remained appropriately cautious. Over the centuries, countless alleged apparitions have surfaced around the world. Some, history has shown, to be truly genuine. Others, sadly, misleading or born of delusion. So, when two young girls in a remote Slovakian village claimed they were speaking with the Mother of God, the local diocesan authorities, led by the diligent Archbishop Jan Babjak, took immediate notice. They began a painstaking, systematic process of observation, collecting testimonies from the children, their families, and all witnesses, meticulously documenting everything that transpired. The messages, carefully transcribed by hand, were preserved. Witnesses were interviewed repeatedly, their accounts cross-referenced. Priests quietly visited the site, observing the spiritual atmosphere and the pilgrims. And above all, they looked for what the Church always looks for as the ultimate arbiter of authenticity: spiritual fruit. Were people changing for the better? Were they returning to the sacraments, particularly confession and communion? Was this experience genuinely bringing people closer to Christ, inspiring deeper faith and charity? Over time, the answer became increasingly clear, irrefutable even. The apparitions themselves may have ended in 1995, but the steady flow of pilgrims to Mount Zvir never stopped. Confessions continued to multiply, conversions were frequent, and lives were demonstrably transformed. People continued to climb that mountain, not for spectacle or sensationalism, but for the quiet solace of silence and the profound power of prayer. Yet for decades, despite these undeniable spiritual benefits, the Church made no official statement. The process of discernment was slow, deliberate, and painstakingly thorough, adhering to long-established, albeit often cumbersome, canonical procedures. But everything changed dramatically in 2024 when the Vatican, under the forward-thinking guidance of Pope Leo XIV, introduced new, streamlined rules on how it handles alleged supernatural phenomena. In May 2024, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith published these new norms for evaluating supernatural claims. These comprehensive guidelines were specifically designed to bring greater clarity, efficiency, and pastoral sensitivity to a process that, historically, had often taken decades, sometimes even centuries, to reach a conclusion. Rather than immediately attempting to definitively prove or disprove whether a vision was genuinely supernatural, the new rules wisely shifted the primary focus to something more pastoral, more immediately beneficial to the faithful. Was the devotion safe? Was it bearing demonstrably good spiritual fruit? These new rules established several new categories of recognition, offering a more nuanced approach than the previous, more rigid binary of supernatural or not supernatural. One of the most important of these new categories was the nihil obstat, a Latin phrase meaning "nothing stands in the way." This meant that if a particular devotion was determined not to be harmful to faith or morals, and if it demonstrably brought spiritual benefits to the faithful, then the Vatican could officially permit public worship, pilgrimages, and veneration, even without definitively confirming the event as miraculously originating from heaven. This significant change opened a crucial door for places like Litmanová, which had quietly, consistently, and profoundly inspired deep devotion for years, but had never received formal, unequivocal recognition from Rome. The local bishop, Archbishop Jan Babjak, seeing this as a providential moment of grace, acted swiftly. In early 2025, he sent comprehensive letters to the Vatican, meticulously detailing the spiritual fruits he had witnessed firsthand. He described the countless heartfelt confessions heard at Mount Svea, the unshakable flow of pilgrims that continued unabated, and the genuine conversions that had taken place there even decades after the apparitions had reportedly ended. He earnestly asked the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith to review the site and to consider its immense spiritual value for the universal Church. And then, on July 9, 2025, the Vatican responded. In a historic letter signed by Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, the prefect of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, the Vatican officially granted a nihil obstat for public devotion to Our Lady of Litmanová. This momentous decision meant that Catholics, not just in Slovakia but across the globe, could now freely venerate Mary under this specific title, Our Lady of Litmanová, Immaculate Purity. The shrine at Mount Svea could now be used for official public masses, for rosary processions, and for spiritual retreats, all with the full blessing of the Church. Pilgrims could come with complete peace of mind, knowing that the Church unequivocally supported their spiritual journey to this sacred place. However, it is crucial to understand what this decision does and, equally important, what it does not mean. The Vatican did not, at this stage, definitively declare that the apparitions themselves were supernatural in origin. That, under the new norms, is no longer the first or sole priority. What they did say, with unmistakable clarity, is this: the devotion is safe, the site is holy, and most importantly, the spiritual fruits emanating from Litmanová are undeniably real and profoundly beneficial. The letter from Cardinal Fernandez even quoted some of the Virgin's messages, especially those that spoke powerfully about freedom, about love, and about the liberating power of simplicity. He explicitly recognized their profound ability to lead people toward the gospel and toward a deeper, more authentic relationship with Christ. He also, with prudent wisdom, acknowledged that some of the messages contained confusing or somewhat unclear ideas. For instance, one message reportedly spoke about sin being the direct cause of all illness. Another suggested a harsh judgment on entire groups of people. Because of these potentially problematic statements, the Vatican specifically asked that only carefully selected messages be published for public consumption. Those that are unambiguously theologically sound and genuinely spiritually helpful. This careful, delicate balance demonstrated the Church's profound wisdom and pastoral sensitivity. It did not rush to declare a full-blown miracle, but it also did not ignore the sincere, deeply felt voices of the faithful. Instead, it listened patiently, discerned carefully, and with gentle grace opened the door for a wave of renewed spiritual blessings. Today, the girls who once saw the Virgin Mary on Mount Svir are grown women. Their names, Ivka Korčáková and Katka Češálková, are known by many in Slovakia and among dedicated Marian devotees around the world. Yet, remarkably, they never sought the spotlight. After the apparitions ended in 1995, they quietly returned to their simple, private lives, shunning public attention. Ivka, the more vocal of the two, occasionally spoke about her experiences in rare interviews and spiritual retreats, but her tone was always profoundly humble, almost self-effacing. She often emphasized that what happened on that mountain wasn't about her, or even about them. It was, she always insisted, solely about God's immense love and Mary's unwavering desire to lead us all back to her Son, Jesus Christ. Both girls have lived remarkably simple, faith-rooted lives, a powerful testament to the authenticity of their experience. And perhaps that is one of the most powerful signs of authenticity in any alleged apparition. There was never a media circus, no clamoring for fame, no controversies surrounding personal gain, just two young girls who received something beautiful, profound, and then quietly, humbly stepped aside, allowing the spiritual fruit to speak for itself. One unique detail that makes the Litmanová apparitions particularly distinct is how Mary identified herself. She didn't use the traditional, widely known titles like Our Lady of Lourdes or Queen of Heaven. Instead, she chose to call herself the Immaculate Purity. It's a name that might sound poetic or simply beautiful at first, but when you pause to reflect on its deeper meaning, it speaks volumes. Mary wasn't merely saying that she was pure. She declared herself to be immaculate purity itself, not merely an example to be emulated, but a living, breathing mirror of what God ultimately desires for each of us. To become pure in heart, free from the stain of sin, simple in spirit, entirely surrendered to His will. Her messages consistently echoed this profound theme. Live simply. Seek silence. Let Jesus set you free. In a world increasingly saturated with overwhelming noise, countless distractions, and profound spiritual confusion, these words feel almost like a whispered invitation from heaven, a gentle but urgent call to recenter our lives. She consistently pointed not to herself, but always, always to her Son. It was always about Jesus. It was always about cultivating inner freedom and embracing the kind of purity that only divine grace can truly bring. You might be wondering, why does any of this matter now? Why would the Vatican, with all its global responsibilities and pressing concerns, take the time and effort to officially approve devotion to a quiet, seemingly obscure mountain in Slovakia? Why would the Church, under the brand new pontificate of Pope Leo XIV, make this one of his very first official recognitions? The answer lies in the very fabric of the world we inhabit in 2025. Today, people are more connected than ever before through technology, yet paradoxically, they are often more isolated in spirit. There is an abundance of information, readily available at our fingertips, but a profound lack of wisdom to discern its meaning. There is much talk about spirituality, about seeking meaning, but often There is less genuine silence, less profound quietude to truly encounter God in the depths of our souls. And into this specific moment in history comes a message from the past, a message from Mount Zvir, a message that gently, lovingly says, I love you just as you are. Begin to live simply. Seek silence so that the Spirit of Christ may be born anew within you. This isn't about politics or power struggles. It's not about sensational drama or the need to definitively prove a miraculous event. It is, at its heart, about reminding us that heaven still speaks, that Mary, our spiritual mother, still walks beside us, guiding us to her Son. The Church's approval of this devotion doesn't mean we are compelled to believe in the apparitions themselves. That is never required of any Catholic. But it does mean that we can safely listen. We can visit the shrine with full confidence. We can open our hearts to the messages and the graces that have flowed from this holy place. Because in a time when so many feel lost, disconnected, and adrift, Litmanová offers a profound, gentle way home. The Vatican's dicastery for the doctrine of the faith, under the discerning leadership of Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, officially granted a nil obstat for public devotion to Our Lady of Litmanová. What this truly means is monumental. Catholics everywhere are now free to pray, to gather, and to build a deeper, more intimate relationship with God through the messages and the distinct spirituality that emerged from this apparition. This is a moment of real significance, not just for the faithful in Slovakia, but for the universal Church across the globe. It is not every day that the Vatican approves a Marian devotion, and it is certainly rare to see one approved so soon after a new pope's election. For Pope Leo XIV, this is one of the first major pastoral decisions of his pontificate, and it sets a profound tone of openness, careful discernment, and deep, compassionate care for the spiritual hunger of God's people worldwide. So what does this nil obstat actually mean for you, for every Catholic? Let's break it down further. First, it is crucial to understand what a nil obstat is and what it is not. It does not mean the Church has officially declared that Mary 100% appeared on Mount Zvir, or that every single message is definitively supernatural in origin. That is a different, higher level of recognition called constat de supernaturalitat, meaning it is confirmed to be of supernatural origin. That has not, at this stage, happened here. Instead, what the Vatican has unequivocally said is this: there is nothing that stands in the way of this devotion. It is safe. It is theologically sound, when filtered carefully to remove any ambiguous elements. And crucially, it has already brought about profound and undeniable spiritual fruit. In simpler, more accessible terms, the Church is saying, people are becoming holier here. People are truly encountering God here, and for us, that matters more than definitively proving a miracle. By giving this powerful green light, the Vatican is, in essence, declaring, we recognize what is happening here. We support the faithful who come here. Let grace continue to flow. And for millions of Catholics around the world who seek authentic encounters with the divine, that is more than enough. It is an invitation. The path forward for Litmanová is already taking beautiful shape. Mount Zvir, the once quiet, unassuming hillside outside Litmanová, will now become an officially recognized and deeply cherished pilgrimage destination for the faithful from all corners of the earth. This recognition will likely lead to more liturgies, more spiritual retreats, more confessionals filled with eager penitents seeking forgiveness, more moments of profound silence, and more inner healing. Local churches and dioceses will likely begin organizing official, large-scale pilgrimages to the site. Bishops from other countries, discerning the spiritual benefits for their own flock, will undoubtedly visit. And those who have felt a spiritual pull toward this devotion, but weren't sure if it was formally approved by the Church, now have their clear answer, their invitation. But the enduring beauty of Litmanová is precisely that it doesn't need grandeur. It is not Fatima with its sprawling monumental basilicas and vast plazas. It is not Lourdes, with its long corridors of flickering candles and miraculous fountains drawing millions. No, Litmanová is, at its heart, a small, humble wooden hut nestled on a forested hill. And perhaps that is exactly the point, the very essence of its powerful message. This devotion doesn't call us to massive crowds or sensational spectacles. It calls us to quiet. It doesn't invite us to grandiosity. It invites us to simplicity. That is the profound, timeless legacy Mary left there in her messages. And that is precisely what the Church, in its wisdom, is now affirming for the entire world. In the end, this isn't just a story about a remote mountain in Slovakia. It's not just about two young girls who experienced something extraordinary, or even about a formal letter from the Vatican. It is, at its core, about how heaven still speaks to humanity, even in our noisy, complex, modern world. It is about how the Church, guided by the Holy Spirit, still listens with profound discernment. And it is about how God, in His infinite love, still reaches out to His people, inviting them into a deeper relationship with Him, even in the quietest, most unexpected corners of the world. So, whether you reside in Slovakia or are watching this from thousands of miles away, the gentle, profound message of Our Lady of Litmanová is for you too. You are loved, you are called to freedom, and you are being invited continually back to the very heart of Christ. Let's answer that call together, embracing simplicity, seeking silence, and allowing the Immaculate Purity to lead us closer to our Savior.